Hey Bunty, greetings from San Francisco. Wish you a very happy new year, and we'd like to wish our listeners a very happy new year too.
Yes, Happy New Year, Rohit. Hope you had a good break, and it feels great to be back on the podcast. We are back for 2018, and I hope this will be an interesting year for both of us and for our listeners. So, what are we kicking things off with this year?
Well, there's a bunch of things to talk about. I think we had also discussed, maybe just doing a general reflection on, my experiences in India over the break, and we could do that at some point of time. But I thought what we'd kick off with is a story that's very much in the news, something that happened 3 days ago. And it's all over the news. Let me actually read out the headline from an article in the New Indian Express published on 12th January.
Hmm,
It says four senior Supreme Court judges call unprecedented press conference.
right.
All you need to know as it happened. Now, what's happened is that the four senior most judges of the Supreme Court, they
Hmm,
directly went to the people via the media, via a press conference, essentially saying that all was not well in the country's top court. And,
hmm,
the number two in the court hierarchy, who's Justice J. Chelameshwar, who's, very distinguished and very well respected person, he has called out, he has essentially sounded a kind of alarm about the state of the Supreme Court, but more broadly about the crisis of democracy in the country. And I think this has been building for a while, is my guess.
right.
But I think the immediate spark for it, as I understand it, is the fact that uh, recently there were a number of articles in Caravan magazine about the mysterious circumstances surrounding the death of Judge Loya, who was the CBI court judge who was presiding over the court over the case involving Amit Shah, the BJP
Hmm,
president. And we had done a couple of stories on this as well. Now, what had happened was that there was various associations of lawyers, as I understand, who had asked for this to be heard by the Supreme Court or to be taken up. And the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court of India, Justice Mishra, what he did was either he didn't act on it, or what he did was he assigned it to a junior judge. So I think that the way in which cases are being assigned to assorted benches is really of the essence here. And I think there is an implied criticism of the Chief Justice of India, Deepak Mishra, as being someone who is going soft on the BJP. Um, now, there's this guy called Gautam Bhatia who's a lawyer, and he's someone who's written a wonderful book on freedom of speech. He's someone whose tweets I follow very closely. He's also
right.
pointed out that the larger context to this is the fact that there has been, over a period of time, a disproportionate concentration of power in the hands of the Chief Justice. And the Chief
Right.
Justice has the ability to randomly assign or to assign, different composition of judges to various benches, which means that, if there is a case which, for whatever reason, a Chief Justice hypothetically doesn't want going a certain way, he can, uh, you know, either give a junior or inexperienced or a pliant judge that particular case to hear. So these are all the kinds of issues at
Right.
stake. Since then, the BJP has alleged that this is some kind of Congress conspiracy. The Prime Minister's principal secretary has gone to meet the judges, I believe, as well as perhaps the Chief Justice of India. Uh,
Right.
Modi is pretending it's business as usual, which is what you would expect him to do, meeting with Netanyahu. But the
Hmm.
fact that the BJP's propaganda army or their PR team is out in full force means that at the very least they're alarmed. So this is a kind of lengthy introduction, and I apologize for the length of it to our listeners. But this is kind of the background of what's going on.
Okay, chalo, let's look at it this way. Now, we all know that there is in any high office, people are prone to envy, right?
Right.
So I'm looking at it. What's the envy angle? There are four people. Is this the main man in the Supreme Court, the Chief Justice? There are five. It's a bench of five, and he's the kind of first among equals. Is that the way? Because I don't know enough about the legal structures to say. Is it simply a case of four people ganging up and being envious and bitchy about Supreme Court judge,
So that
or
Yeah, so that is an angle that's been played. Now, one of the things that has been mentioned is that the way it works in the Supreme Court is, the principle of seniority is what decides who will be the Chief Justice.
right?
And the number two guy, Chelameshwar, could have been
Yeah.
Chief Justice. There's
I
something I read which said that it's just because of the way a particular notice was written, where
mm.
Mishra's name was higher. So theoretically, that would be the case. Now,
Acha, chalo. So you're saying
prevents one?
there's a
Yeah,
possibility.
that's a
Okay.
possibility. But what prevents one here? What prevents me? And again, I'm not discounting this altogether because we certainly should cover all angles. But just one thought I want to share. What individually would prevent me from following that interpretation is the fact that he's been a person of unimpeachable integrity, and even someone like Subramaniam Swamy, who's otherwise just prone to the wildest kinds of accusations, made an interesting point. He said that, look, these are, when you choose to become a judge, what happens is that you essentially over a lifetime forego a fortune that you can make by being a lawyer or by being senior counsel. Because if you're good enough to be a judge, it means you're very clearly very talented and gifted as a lawyer. Uh,
Right.
you know, uh, Sort of assuming there's no sort of principle of nepotism involved. So we should at the very least hear what they say carefully. And the thing is that Justice Mishra, who's the Chief Justice, will retire. So one of the other four would become Chief Justice anyways. It may be Chela Meshwar, it may be someone else. I think it would be someone called Gogoi, Justice Gogoi. So the fact that Justice Gogoi is among these four, and he may have actually jeopardized his own possible promotion, leads me to believe that there's a little more here in the pot than envy.
Okay. So Mishra ji has been fielding cases in a not so sensible way, or in a way that can be construed to be favorable to the Bharatiya Janata Party. That is like the first thing. And there are three bits of the puzzle. One, there is these four number twos, as it were,
Mm-hmm.
getting up, calling a press conference, which is unprecedented. That's the first bit of the puzzle. The second bit of the puzzle is the implication that Mishra ji is not utterly fair when it comes to distributing cases, because if it is yeah, there is some blackness in pulses, there is some dal mein kala. And the final bit of the puzzle is the guy who was looking out for Justice Loya, his death and the investigation of that matter, which can have grave and serious consequences for the current government, has been pushed in the direction of a judge who there is a view that he may not do justice, no pun intended. Now, my question, Rohit, on all of this is, we are not well qualified enough to get into the intricacies of how cases are distributed, what is the authority structure of the Supreme Court of India, because we are not legally qualified to comment on that. But I definitely think that both of us, and I hope you agree, that what is happening is, with this government, certain instruments of state are being kind of taken down.
Right,
The
right.
authenticity and
Sanctity.
the sanctity of those institutions are being taken down. Now, this has happened at state level for a long time. So there are, in any kind of depiction of the police or the judge in a Hindi movie which is set in a particular state in India, it is always shown that the police and is at the beck and call of the politician, and the police machinery is basically no longer credible in any state, right?
Right.
Now what is happening is, we are seeing, this is not a movie, but in real life, the judiciary in our country is being gradually hemmed in, or that's the feeling, that the neutrality and everything above board is being compromised. Is this something that you'd say is peculiar to this government, or other governments have tried it in the past and failed miserably, and this
Failed,
government is trying to do a better job of it?
failed or succeeded. I mean, partly failed, partly succeeded. So it's a very interesting and complicated question you raise here. And my quick take on it would be that a difference in degree, maybe a difference in kind. Now,
Right.
certainly, any government anywhere in the world within democracies, let's leave dictatorships out because they're a different kind of ball game altogether,
Right.
right? And when you think of some of the farcical things that have happened in places like Pakistan and so on, where
Mm,
Was it Nawaz Sharif's supporters who just stormed the Supreme Court and
yeah.
held it hostage, so on. So we leave that out of the equation. Um, this is not the first time this has happened. The precedent for this is a dissenting opinion that was given by a judge called H.S. Khanna, I think.
Right.
And I again learnt of this recently during the emergency.
Right.
He's and they were also and he's someone who paid the price in terms of his career because of the
Right.
stand he took.
Right.
So in the past as well, in the past the Congress has tried to subvert the judicial system. The emergency being kind of a classic example of it.
Right.
Now, there's been a larger question that's been floating around now for, I'd say, the better part of a year about whether we are in a kind of emergency without it being called as such. Like, is the
Correct.
BJP essentially waging a kind of constant low level kind of emergency on the state of the Indian Republic?
Mm.
This is, and the argument is that yes, and they are also doing a similar thing with regard to communalism, for instance. The idea is
Mm.
that a full-fledged riot of the kind that we saw in 92, 93, or in the aftermath of the Babri demolition might cost the BJP too much politically. So what's happening is that you create a climate of low-level terror, and it's like Muslims or Dalits are permanently living in that state of fear. So the same thing is happening with regard to the erosion of institutions. I certainly think that yes, there is a kind of crisis with in the manner with regard to the manner in which different institutions have been either weakened or disrespected or just sort of undermined. And I can name a few of them. The first of them is the Reserve Bank of India. That the autonomy of the Reserve Bank of India, I think, has been severely compromised by
Right.
crony capitalists who've been sympathetic to the Modi government, who the Modi
Right.
government has been sympathetic towards, and the Congress also, was sympathetic to these crony capitalists. Couple of things happened. One is Rajan was larger than life. I think at a very personal level, Modi was made profoundly insecure by him because, Modi is made insecure by people who are qualified. Secondly, Rajan had very clearly announced his intention to clean up, banks that were not performing, and this very shady kind of practice of public sector banks writing large loans to these industrialists, whether it's Ajit Gulabchand, whether it's Vijay Mallya, whether it's the Adanis, SRs, whoever. So that was one. The election commission is another one, especially in terms of what we saw in Gujarat and how the Gujarat election dates were set. That's the second one. Parliament itself, the ways in which through ordinances, the ordinance route through which a number of measures were introduced, uh, that's been another point that's been raised. And Modi has also not really bothered to speak to members of parliament in the time he's been prime minister. And then finally, now we see the judiciary as well. The police, for
Mm.
instance, in Gujarat and other states are just again thoroughly compromised. So my answer to that would actually be yes. In this is just the
You you
final stage.
you make an interesting set of points. You've pointed out this current thing in judiciary. You've pointed out the central bank. You've shown the election commission or instances of the election commission not behaving at fairly, and also state machinery being biased in favor of politicians. Now, let me raise a specter of something, which is that what happens, and the other thing that's been happening in parallel has been this yearly, this kind of praise of anything to do with the defense and the army, right?
Right.
That has been rising, right? So if you look at our nation's institutions like graphic equalizer on a music system, things like judiciary, central bank, election commission, state mechanisms of justice and policing have been turned down low, or their credibility has been dialed down. The military, I don't want to call it the military industrial complex because there's Hajar theories behind it, but let's just take the military itself. That has been dialed up by the BJP. Now, it's a very risky route. And I hope that our capable soldiers and generals in the military, navy, and the air force don't fall prey to it, because there is a risk that suddenly the military begins, like in any kind of failing state where the institutions of democracy start faltering. The military, with its kind of, we've seen this in our neighborhood pretty much every time, it's kind of organized cantonment culture, suddenly feels that it is equipped to take on the business of nation running. right? I hope it doesn't happen to India, but it's just a specter to raise that if you are diminishing and devaluing the instruments of state at a local level, at a central level, people, the normal citizen, will think, what is the point of doing this politics? Let's just get the military in,
Right, right.
right? And that's a frightening thing, because obviously other thing that has happened is the balance between communities, the harmony. Aside from kind of the lowering of the credibility of institutions, the harmony of different communities of coexisting has been challenged, and a challenge for the sake of electoral gains. So it's a heady mixture that we are seeing in India at the start of 2018. But the interesting thing, Rohit, in all of this is that the electoral success still seems to be sitting with the Bharatiya Janata Party, as was the case in Gujarat. But when we did an episode on it in 2017, we said that this was their home game, this is their home turf, right? So we would be very surprised if they lost Gujarat. But what is heartening to see is that there is a coalition of alternative voices. I wouldn't say shaped by the Congress, because they're far from it, that are arising, which is local politicians, which may be heartening. So I just wanted to raise the specter. And I know we've talked at length about this topic, which is about the compromise of the judiciary. I hope it gets fixed. I hope the judiciary remains above board, and it doesn't fall to this current practice of this government. But I think, how are we doing for time, Rohit? Because we've spoken.
We should wrap up now, because I have a few thoughts to add, but I think I'll hold them, and I'm sure we'll have a chance to go back to this, because we are pushing about 16 minutes now. But I think just you're right that the military is another institution which also is at the same risk of being kind of corroded, and hopefully there's, as you point out, there's a cloud. There's a silver lining to this cloud, where at least the rot in the judiciary is stemmed, and that
Yeah.
translates into a mechanism for the delivery of justice. I mean, it's perhaps too much to ask for Amit Shah to go to jail, but hopefully we don't see that kind of travesty of justice again.
Chalo. On that note, Rohit, let's wrap this up. And welcome to our listeners once again to a spanking new set of podcasts for 2018. Please keep listening. Please keep supporting us. It's been fantastic doing them in 2017. We look forward to your support and questions and comments through 2018.
Yeah, excellent. All right, take care, man.
Take care. Bye bye.